is no way. It shows, for one, the government can't sell it.
Today, why Julia Gillard won't tell the truth about her Gina Rinehart deal. I asked Christopher Pyne, aren't you embarrassed? Unions and the left slam foreign workers. How racist is this? And the ABC says the opposition is too negative. It should talk.
It's greedy, fat and ugly.
I'm Andrew Bolt, and this is the Bolt Report. The Prime Minister this week told Australia's miners to their face to just suck it up.
Here's the rub. You don't own the minerals, I don't own the minerals. Governments only sell you the right to mine the resource. There's nowhere in the world where mining has a stronger future, and this is Australia, and it has a Labor government.
Very aggressive. You'd think mining was so simple any idiot with a shovel could do it. But why did Julia Gillard have to sound like she's in a brawl with miners? My theory? Because she's told another untruth. On Friday, a week ago, Immigration Minister Chris Bowen announced Gina Rinehart could import 1,700 workers to help build her giant Roy Hill mine.
This agreement will ensure that regional and national skills shortages do not constrain this significant project and jeopardise economic growth and local jobs.
Those foreign workers will do jobs in the Pilbara no one here wants. But the mine they'll help build will still give more than 6,000 Australians work. So, a good deal. One the Prime Minister should boast about. But union leaders meeting Gillard that day exploded, and the Prime Minister panicked. She reportedly told them she hadn't been warned about this deal and was furious with Bowen. Now, in Parliament, Gillard didn't deny making those comments and had trouble backing her own agreement.
Does the Prime Minister support the agreement reached with Gina Rinehart for the Roy Hill project?
I am happy when major mining companies create Australian jobs.
Does she or does she not support the agreement?
It supports Australian jobs, and I support Australian jobs.
We just want a straight answer from the Prime Minister. Does she support it?
Straight up, I support Australian jobs.
Does she support the agreement lock, stock and barrel, including the employment of up to 1,700 foreign workers?
Is about this agreement for up to 1,715 foreign workers, and it has my support.
At last. Gillard even claimed the first time she was fully briefed about this deal was 2 days before Bowen announced it.
I was fully briefed on my return from Chicago, which happened on Wednesday.
So, didn't know about it, didn't like it. Oh, really? In fact, there have been many reports since last year that Rinehart was negotiating exactly this deal. Here's one.
Her new Roy Hill iron ore project is now negotiating with government Australia's first Enterprise Migration Agreement, or EMA. Though details are confidential, it's believed this would bring in around 1,500 semi-skilled migrants.
The Immigration Minister even says he kept the government briefed.
I updated the Productivity Committee of the Cabinet informally as to progress.
And look who is a member of that committee Bowen kept briefing, Julia Gillard herself. So Gillard knew all along this was coming. So why did she pretend to union leaders she didn't? A lack of character. And I'd say she was scared of one of the deal's loudest critics, Australian Workers' Union boss Paul Howes, who helped make her Prime Minister. That's why she talked tough at the miners this week. She had to pretend she wasn't really the type to have done the miners a deal. It's mad. Even when Gillard does do the right thing, she makes out she didn't. Labor got a faint hint of hope this week from Newspoll, showing it had clawed back to within 8 points of the coalition. And Julia Gillard was back in front of Tony Abbott, just as preferred Prime Minister. It wasn't much, and you had to ignore 2 other polls this week that were much, much worse for Labor. But it was enough for Labor to start the big media story of the week, that Tony Abbott was turning people off with his...
destructive negativity.
The destructive negativity.
The destructive negativity.
The destructive negativity of the Leader of the Opposition.
And then, to top off Labor's attack, came these scenes of Abbott and Christopher Pyne, the manager of opposition business, fleeing the House.
No! Lock the doors, too late. No way.
Joining me now is Christopher Pyne. Chris, not a great look. Did you regret giving Labor and the media that ammunition?
Look, I don't, because Labor was engaging in a pathetic, juvenile, puerile stunt on that morning where they were trying to get Craig Thomson to vote with the Coalition so they could say that we were also accepting his vote. If they weren't so embarrassed about accepting Craig Thomson's vote themselves, they wouldn't have done that. And, of course, the only way to negate his vote was for me to get out of the chamber. Now, I could have got into the advisor's box, but because Anna Burke is a very new Deputy Speaker sitting in the chair, because of the peculiarity of our arrangements these days with the Speaker not being able to sit in the chair, I thought if I get out of the chamber, there's no doubt my vote won't be counted. So I bolted, and I must say I got to the doors and I was out the chamber. So my children couldn't believe I could ever run. In fact, they've never seen me run, except on the beach, playing beach cricket.
But Chris, everyone, you know, I know that that's what you were on about, but the thing is, it's given the media a lot of chance to laugh at you and suggest that Tony Abbott as a panic merchant or something. I'm not quite sure what the sting of the whole tale is, but it's been a negative.
Well, I think it's very much an inside the Beltway issue. I don't think anybody in the public really understands what was going on because they don't realise that the doors are locked, people's votes are counted when they're sitting in their seats, etc. So I had to get out of the chamber. Now, the next vote, of course, I asked Anna Burke if she realised that being in the advisor's box was not being in the chamber, and she said, of course, she did. So I stayed in the advisor's box for the next few votes because there's a very important principle here, Andrew, and that is that the Coalition says Craig Thomson shouldn't be voting. We won't accept his vote. It's a tainted vote. Labor wants to cling to power with his vote and therefore accept it. Now, they tried to get him to vote with us so that we would look as hypocritical as they are. We weren't going to look that hypocritical.
All right.
So I was prepared to be embarrassed momentarily by running out of the chamber rather than be the hypocrites that Labor are being.
Now, listen, the week before we were told that Craig Thomson was too suicidal to criticise. Now as part of a stunt to try and embarrass you. I think it worked. Does that mean that he's not too suicidal to criticise? What's the story here?
Well, I think Labor has been hoisted on their own petard to an extent, Andrew, because the week before last, of course, we were being told by the end of the week some members of the Labor Party were invoking another member of Parliament who'd committed suicide, suggesting that Craig Thomson was so on the edge, so on the brink that the Coalition would be bearing responsibility for whatever happened. Now, of course, by mid the following week, he was laughing and high-fiving and hugging members of Parliament at the back of the chamber because of the hilarity of this stunt that Labor and he had pulled.
So he's fair game
I think
again.
The authenticity... Well, I think the authenticity of Labor's wringing hands about his mental health being first and foremost has taken somewhat of a punch below the waterline. Look, he's not fair game. He's never been fair game. We think it's perfectly reasonable for the Coalition to ask the Labor Party and the member for Dobell about the circumstances surrounding the loss of $500,000 of Health Service Union members' money, and that's the bottom line here.
That's true, but the thing is, there's been a lot of attack on the Coalition being too negative, Tony Abbott being too negative. It seems you've been pulling your punches. You've stopped those suspension of standing orders after every question time, where you try to disrupt things, make the government look like it's out of control. And you've also, well, I read in the Sydney Morning Herald yesterday that members of Parliament's Powerful Privileges Committee will mount a go-slow inquiry into Thomson, hand out only the minimum penalty. Liberals there, apparently on the committee, also worried that you're going in too hard. Is this true?
Look, I haven't heard that, Andrew, and I don't speak to the members of the Liberal Party on the Privileges Committee because it would be probably quite wrong for me to do so, so I am being ultra cautious. The Privileges Committee has written to me asking me for a great deal of information, a very comprehensive response to prove that the member for Dobell misled the parliament. That will take some time to be done properly. The privileges matter is not going away, but the coalition has certainly not taken its foot off the accelerator about this very bad government. The reason why we have negative things to say about this government is because they are so rank and so incompetent and basically corrupt. I mean, the Australian Network tender verged on the corrupt. They are incompetent in every respect with the delivery of their programs.
So as the chief opposition's tactician, as the chief opposition's tactician, you're not going to back off on what's been criticised as too negative. Negative, you will go.
Look, the Labor Party are only complaining about the opposition's tactics and strategy because they are working, Andrew. Now, the reality is the public hates this government. The Prime Minister is 30-60 in the approval in the polls. The truth is the public want an election and the opposition is holding the government to account, as we should. We're only reflecting the public's anger with an incompetent government that taxes too much and spends too much. And if we weren't doing that, we wouldn't be doing our job.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate the fastest man in Parliament. Coming up, who's more negative, Tony Abbott or the ABC? Warren Mundine and Alexander Downer are next.
figures on her front bench and rise above it all and just look as though she was governing in the interests of the whole nation. But no, she's down there, you know, nasty and dirty with the rest of them, and it doesn't work.
I don't think that works. But Warren, it has fed a big discussion on whether Tony Abbott is too negative. Like, they've seized on the news poll earlier this week, suggesting that he's now even less popular than Julia Gillard. Is this criticism right, that is too negative?
Look, there is a bit of truth to that. It is a bit negative. But at the same time, what do you expect from an opposition? Also, you know, they're going to have to come up with ideas, they're going to have to come up with policies, and as we get closer to the election, I presume that will happen. But they're going to have to do that. The issue for the government is you know, they've seized on this idea, and it probably comes out of focus polling and that as well, that he is seen as negative, and they're going to play up, and they're going to play up on this.
So what should he be doing then?
Well, for him, he's going to have to deal with that. But the problem for the government is that we want a government that's going to govern. And at the moment, what we're seeing through the parliamentary performance, through a whole lot of other issues that the government's got to deal with, you know, who remembers the budget? Who remembers the whole wide range of things? You know, their message has just been drowned out by all this negativity. So that, you know, and they've got to start getting back on top of the game and focusing on that.
Well, talking about the negative, I thought actually the most startling example of negativity was an attack on Gina Rinehart this week on Q&A. Just have a look at just some of the highlights, and we haven't been able to show some of the nastier bits. It's not suitable for a Sunday, let me tell you. Here it is.
As greedy as all get out.
If I woke up in a motel with her on the next pillow...
Poor woman, she is not a beauty.
What is it about Gina Rinehart that licenses these kinds of attacks?
Look, this is getting disgraceful. You know, people saw my comments during the week. You know, it's all becoming personal. It's all starting to get stuck into people and that. You know, I find this all quite bizarre. Here we have our biggest industry that's keeping us afloat, keeping us on a global world stage, and all we're doing is bagging out personalities and attacking them in such a personal, low way. We've got to get away from this. The government needs to get away from this. The media needs to get away from this, and we need to start focusing on it. I do a lot of work in the mining industry and the construction area. These are the people that are dragging Indigenous people out of poverty. These are the people that are getting jobs. These are the people who are doing a fantastic job out there, and these are the people who are going to make a big difference in Aboriginal people's lives as well as for the wider Australia. We need to be sitting down and working with the mining industry, sitting down and working with these individuals rather than smacking them around and making personal attacks.
What do you make of it, Alexander? A little hate session on the ABC about Gina Rinehart?
I watched the Q&A programme, and I have to say I was quite disgusted by what those people said, left-wing people, who apparently think they have a licence of personal abuse of Gina Rinehart to say the most preposterous things about her personally. But on the other hand are the people who suck in breath and shout outrage if anybody ever criticises them. Look, the truth is this woman has built up a massive business. She's become the richest woman in the world. It's an extraordinary achievement. She's been a brilliant entrepreneur, taken massive risks and really made it work, employs thousands of people, and apparently led by Wayne Swan and the Australian Labor government. They are continually attacking her in particular, Clive Palmer, Twiggy Forrest. It's all right for BHP, Rio and Xstrata, which are largely foreign-owned companies. It's all right for them to make billions of dollars.
They get a special deal.
And they get a special deal. But if there are Australians who are entrepreneurs, massive risk takers, not like BHP and Rio and Xstrata, massive risk takers, apparently there's a licence to attack these people personally and in the most vicious.
And this in a week in which, what has Gina Rinehart done? Announced that there's going to be 6,000 more jobs for Australians. Wow, shock, horror. I mean, let's vilify it.
And that's how we fell into a xenophobic approach about that.
I want to ask you about that, Warren. I want to ask you about that because...
When am I going to find something to disagree with?
We'll find something.
My partner said to me they're going to have to find someone from the Labor Party to come in now.
Is there anyone left?
Well, the xenophobia is right. Gina Rinehart got permission to bring in 1,700 foreign workers temporarily to help build the mine at the same wage rate, should we say, as Australian workers who won't do the jobs. And Julia Gillard, in not actually coming out exactly to endorse it, in fact, bagging the agreement to union leaders, seems to have unleashed, well, some people are calling it xenophobia. Let me give you one example. Here's Doug Cameron, a Labor senator.
We've got, you know, workers being marched off the job in Kurri Kurri, marched off the job by Qantas in Melbourne. and Chinese workers marching in Western Australia.
Well, a lot of those workers, actually, that we are already seeing on these 457 visas, what they're called, seem to be from Britain and Ireland and places like that.
Scotland.
It's Scotland. Is there racism at work here?
Definitely. I think it has been a disgraceful response to the issuing of these visas. There's obviously a shortage of particular skills. The mine needs to go ahead in the interests of the nation. The government, particularly the Immigration Minister, made exactly the right decision to give these 457 visas to these people. And the response of the Prime Minister in her discussions with the unions to say that, you know, she was appalled or whatever she said, was a response that then triggered a chain reaction of abuse of this scheme and of these people. Honestly, I just thought, is this the Australia of the 1950s, or are we in 2012?
Warren,
is this the Queen's first year, or is it her Diamond Jubilee?
Was it a White Australia policy?
The biggest issue here is we're living the history of the problems we had in the 1980s and forward. We have problems with training, we have problems with getting apprentices in, we need problems of skilling, and this is the result of that. We know we've got massive shortage of skills within Australia, so we have to reapproach the education system. We have to look at ideas that Twiggy Forrest is putting forward in regard to vocational training and get people skilled up into guaranteed jobs. There's no doubt about that. But the thing that really worries me is that in the short term that we've got to fill these positions. We've got to have skilled people coming in. And you know, Doug, quite frankly, he shouldn't have mentioned China. That is just playing. I just find it funny that people who attack Pauline Hanson over these issues about Asia and everything like that are now the same people who are using the same language.
Exactly.
Spot on. Listen, I want to show you a grab of Greg Conway, the Climate Change Minister, Alexander, because I think he just showed that there's one job in politics that he can't do. Have a look.
Cabramatta, Parramatta, yeah. Wangaratta, Wangaratta, Coolangatta, but the punchlines, everywhere is doomed, man.
Now, Alexander, there's one ministerial position where an ability to sing is a requirement. I want to show you that position. Here it is.
We'll cope and we'll do it by pretty mama and
that's my life.
Now, Alexander, foreign ministers need to sing, don't they?
He made me look good. He made me look good.
They've cancelled that singing now. What they used to do is have have all the foreign ministers at the ASEAN Regional Forum meeting sing a song. You can see me singing a Beach Boys song there, and they've cancelled it.
Oh, well,
Don't do it anymore.
In that case,
they heard him. That's what
Greg Conway can still hope to be Foreign Minister of Australia. Alexander Downer. Warren Mundy, thank you so much for joining me. And coming up, meet the hypocrite of the week.
He's very aggressive.
Labor this week monstered Tony Abbott for his negativity, and the ABC 7:30 happily joined in. Its report on this new ugly politics started with 5 examples, all of Conservatives attacking the poor Prime Minister.
This Prime Minister's epitaph will be, "Here lies Julia Gillard, lying to the end."
A vitriolic, bitter, lying, condescending, arrogant facade of a Prime Minister.
They ought to be out there kicking her to death.
Yeah, that's it. Bring back the guillotine. Well, I'm glad that people...
This is a rotten Prime Minister.
Yes, Gillard does cop abuse. But missing from the ABC's report was any mention of Labor staffers starting a mini race riot on Australia Day against Abbott, or of Labor ministers destroying Kevin Rudd, or of the Treasurer calling rich miners poisonous. And no mention of the Prime Minister's own strident tone.
Yes, he is Gina Rinehart's butler. How truly pathetic the opposition is. Here is this hollow, bitter man.
No, but we sure got a lot of Health Minister Tanya Plibersek blaming Abbott.
Tony Abbott has set a tone in the parliament where he's very front foot, he's very aggressive.
This is the same Plibersek who this week had posters in her office vilifying Abbott as homophobic, sexist and racist. Our hypocrite of the week. And that's the show. Thanks for watching. I'm Andrew Bolt. See you next week. Goodbye.